It's a difficult question. The problem is that the aluminum has been used in industry and for about 90 years, ever since 1926. And it has been assumed that it's safe, but it's never been properly tested because the traditional toxicity studies in animal models for aluminum adjuvants have actually not been conducted. So it's been launched on the assumption that it's safe. And most clinical trials today with vaccines either use an aluminum-containing placebo and they compare that to the vaccine in safety assessments, or they use another vaccine. And so there is not really hard, solid evidence for safety, while independent studies in animal models and also in humans show that the adjuvant is not as safe because it has been linked now with several neurological disorders. Well, in animal studies, when we injected aluminum, we found that it induces motor neuron damage and a wide range of behavioral abnormalities in mice. And we use the same amount of adjuvants that is used in vaccines. We also found that if you inject neonatal mice with the same amount of aluminum that children get from pediatric vaccines, if you follow these mice for about 6 months after, they have long-term impairments in behavior, and certain neurological functions are just abnormal in these mice. So again, this shows that the adjuvant is not as safe as it's been assumed traditionally. And what is rather shocking is that if one looks at the documents from the US Food Drug Administration, where they discuss the issue of adjuvant safety, they openly admit that they've never required proper toxicity studies in animals because it's been assumed that vaccines and adjuvants are safe. So they're used under the assumption that are safe. But to the public, the message is being conveyed, this has been tested, it's proven, it's okay, there's no concern. Well, it's, again, the adjuvant has been used for 90 years, and people are reluctant to change. It's very cheap. It works in that it stimulates the immune system. And the problem is that the pharma is working on developing new adjuvants, but they simply haven't found anything that works as well. And it's as cost effective as aluminum, so they're very reluctant to change. Well, with Gardasil, it seems to be a particularly notorious vaccine. It is adjuvanted with aluminum, but there seems to be worldwide far more adverse reactions, and I mean serious adverse reactions from Gardasil than from any other vaccines. One possible reason is that the adjuvant used both in Gardasil, which is Merck's vaccine, and Cervarix, which is Glaxo HPV vaccine. Both vaccines use novel form of adjuvant formulations, which have never been separately tested. And again, the trials for both HPV vaccines have used an aluminum placebo versus the vaccine. And so again, there's no really good safety data. But the adjuvant itself, it's not the only problem. We have again followed this pattern of adverse reactions, and we found again that the most, by far the most prevalent type of adverse reactions from both Gardasil and Cervarix are autoimmune disorders affecting the nervous system. And so what does it mean, autoimmune? It means that your own immune system is abnormally stimulated, so it attacks your own tissue. And what has been found is that well, one of the typical mechanisms by which vaccines can induce autoimmune diseases is if there is a production of antibodies to the vaccine component, so the antigen that's put into the vaccine, and these antibodies cross-react and bind to our own tissue. And so basically they signal to the immune system, destroy your own tissue. So we investigated this issue further in mice, and so what we have done is we immunized mice with Gardasil, again the same base scale to body weight of mice, the same what's been given to young women. And these mice normally respond and they develop anti-HPV antibodies. And we found that if we incubate these antibodies with the brain protein extract from the same mice, the antibodies bind to the brain protein extract. And we are now in the process of identifying exactly to see to which components in the brain do they bind. So this is a pretty solid proof that the antibody is cross-reactive. So it doesn't only target the HPV virus, but it will also target certain components in the brain. And the medical community has already suspected that, because there's been reports, case reports of patients in Japan who developed neurological complications following Gardasil, and the only treatment that worked was the immunoadsorption plasmapheresis, which basically works to remove pathogenic autoantibodies from the serum, from the blood of the patient. And that was the only effective treatment. And in this case, they also screened the sera to find if they could identify any known autoantibodies, and they couldn't find anything, and they suspected that the only possible explanation is that it's the actual antibody that was produced by the vaccine that was causing problems. So now we have experimental data in animals verifying, if you like, the suspicion. The common explanation from the regulatory authorities around the world is that all the neurological complications that result in association with HPV vaccines are psychogenic disorders, so psychosomatic disorders. And this is simply a very lame excuse to swipe the inconvenient truth down the carpet, because, again, if this was just an isolated case or two in one country, but it's around the world, there is reports from Canada, from the US, from Japan. Japan has recently actually suspended all recommendations for HPV vaccinations because of safety concerns. In Europe, in Denmark, in all European countries, UK, just this increase in neurological problems and complications, long-term disabling in children or young women that were previously healthy. Multiple sclerosis, acute disseminated encephalitis, optic neuritis. These are autoimmune diseases that are can be easily diagnosed, and they're recognized by multiple sclerosis, for example. Demyelinating lesion, a psychogenic disorder cannot produce a demyelinating lesion in the brain. So the explanation that is given by the medical authorities simply doesn't hold water. It's irrational. It's never possible to find 100% proof, but if you weigh the evidence, it comes to probability, and all the evidence strongly points that we have a problem. And young children are not experimental animals, not that you would even want to do that to an experimental animal. And this is for a vaccine that's frankly absolutely unnecessary, because it hasn't been proven yet to show long-term clinical benefit. It hasn't prevented yet a single case of cervical cancer. And it will not be known if it's actually able to prevent cervical cancer in the long run, because the follow-up trials, the follow-up in clinical trials has been too short. And even if the vaccine is proven to be effective against actual cervical cancers, it will not reduce the burden of cervical cancer beyond what we have already achieved with Pap screening. That's the bottom line. So we already have a safe and effective treatment that doesn't cause adverse reactions. And there is simply no need to put such a large population of healthy young teenage girls, again, at risk for a vaccine that has no proven clinical benefit so far. Aluminum is certainly a problem, and efforts should be made towards developing safer adjuvants. And these efforts are not going to be made unless the problem is recognized. And it's not recognized simply because of inertia. We used it for 90 years, and let's just stick with it. But again, it's irresponsible. Again, this is not about let's stop vaccinated, but let's look at how can we develop safer vaccines. I've just served several times as an expert in court cases of vaccine injuries, but that's about